Have you ever felt a gentle call inside you, guiding each step in soft whispers? For Jorge Mario Bergoglio, that call came early in life. He was born in 1936 on a bright street in Buenos Aires, Argentina. His home was small but warm. His father worked on the trains, and his mother cared for Jorge and his four younger siblings. Money was not plentiful, but love filled every corner of their house. Buenos Aires was a busy city, full of color and sound. Every morning, buses rattled down the streets, and vendors called out to sell fruit and coffee. Children ran after each other as they kicked a worn-out soccer ball. Music drifted through open windows, and the smell of fresh bread rose from bakery ovens. In the middle of this lively scene, young Jorge found joy in simple things. He played soccer with friends in the dusty lane behind his house. He spent quiet afternoons reading a tattered book in a shaded corner. He listened to his grandmother tell stories of faith and hope. From a young age, Jorge felt drawn to the church. He did not go because someone forced him. He went because something inside him wanted to be there. He would slip into a wooden pew at the back of the small parish, watching candles flicker and listening to the priest's calm voice. He felt a warmth in his heart whenever he saw the stained glass windows glow in the morning sun. One day, Jorge knelt in a confessional box, speaking softly about his sins and worries. When he finished, the priest remained silent for a long moment. Jorge heard nothing but quiet breathing. Then, deep inside, a clear word came to him. Serve. The word was gentle and steady, like a soft breeze guiding him forward. He did not shout it or write it down. Instead, he felt a new sense of purpose rise in his chest. After that moment, Jorge's life changed in small but sure ways. He woke early each day to pray in a silent room. He filled his nights with reading about faith, philosophy, and the lives of holy men and women. His friends saw a peaceful glow in his eyes, but they did not always understand why he was so calm. Jorge would smile and say that he was simply listening to the voice inside. At home, he helped his mother with household chores without complaining. He found joy in washing dishes and cleaning the backyard. He carried books under his arm as he walked to school, greeting neighbors with a respectful nod. When he saw someone in need, a lost child, an elderly neighbor, a stray dog, he paused to offer help. These small acts of kindness grew from the word he heard in that confessional, serve. As Jorge grew into a young man, he thought about many careers. He imagined becoming a doctor, a teacher, or even a writer. Yet each time he dreamed, the call to serve grew stronger. It was not a loud command, but a gentle pull in his heart. At night, he would lie in bed and ask himself why he felt different. He felt drawn to lives of quiet sacrifice, rather than to paths of fame or success. One afternoon, after finishing his schoolwork, Jorge walked to the parish to pray. He spoke with the same priest who had heard his confession years earlier. Jorge told him about his doubts, his hopes, and the word that changed him, serve. The priest listened with kind eyes and said nothing. In the silence that followed, Jorge felt certain he must follow this calling. He would give his life to God, not for glory or praise, but to help others find peace and hope. In the days that followed, Jorge took small steps toward his new path. He joined a church group where he served meals to the poor. He taught younger children to read in a dusty classroom. He visited the sick in the hospital, offering a prayer and a warm smile. Each time he acted, he felt the quiet voice inside guiding him, reminding him why he had chosen this journey. Though his journey had just begun, Jorge's heart was already full of peace. He did not know where this path would lead, but he trusted the gentle call that first reached him in the confessional. He walked forward each day with courage and faith, ready to serve in whatever way God would ask. And so the quiet boy from Buenos Aires began a story that would touch the world. In his simple acts of kindness, in his gentle prayers and steady trust, Jorge Mario Bergoglio learned the true meaning of service. His humble beginning shows us that even the smallest voice can guide us to do great things for others. When Jorge Mario Bergoglio decided to follow his calling, he joined the Jesuit community. Jesuits are a group of priests who live simply and study deeply. Every morning, Jorge woke before sunrise to pray with his brothers. They read the Bible, spoke about faith, and made vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Their days were full of study and prayer. They learned philosophy and theology in quiet classrooms. They practiced discipline in every task, whether sweeping the floor or writing letters. Not long after beginning his training, Jorge fell seriously ill. A severe lung infection left him weak and struggling to breathe. Doctors told him they would need to remove part of his lung. He faced pain and uncertainty, but he did not lose hope. In the hospital, alone in a small room, he learned the power of patience. Every breath was a gift. He prayed softly through the long nights, trusting that God would care for him. When he finally recovered, he felt a new strength in his heart. He said later that illness taught him to listen more closely to others who suffer and to trust God's presence in every trial. After his recovery, Jorge returned to his Jesuit studies with renewed energy. He taught at seminaries, guiding young men who, like him, felt a call to serve. He visited hospitals to comfort patients with kind words and quiet prayers. He walked through prison yards, offering hope to those who felt forgotten. He spent time in poor neighborhoods, sharing simple meals and listening to stories of struggle. He wore plain black shoes and rode crowded buses, never seeking special treatment. His life showed that true faith is more than words. It is acts of love toward people in need. As the years passed, Jorge rose in church leadership. He became a bishop, then an archbishop, always keeping the same humble style. Yet the greatest surprise came in March 2013. The cardinals gathered in the Sistine Chapel to choose a new pope. After long hours of voting, white smoke curled from the chimney above St. Peter's Square. White smoke means a pope has been chosen. On that cool day, millions of people watched and waited. When the white smoke appeared, cheers filled the air. The world learned that Jorge Mario Bergoglio would be Pope Francis. Few outside the Vatican knew his name, but soon everyone would remember him. When he stepped onto the balcony, he wore simple white robes. He bowed his head and said, "Brothers and sisters, pray for me." In those words, he showed humility and invited everyone to join him in faith. He chose the name Francis to honor Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis was known for his love of the poor, his care for animals and nature, and his joyful spirit. By choosing this name, the new pope sent a clear message. He would be a servant of peace, a friend of the poor, and a guardian of creation. From that moment, Pope Francis began to guide a church he called to walk beside people, not above them. He spoke about mercy, compassion, and the need to care for our common home, the earth. He reminded leaders that wealth and power must not blind us to the needs of the weak. He urged each person to reach out with kindness and to listen with an open heart. Through simple actions, choosing a modest apartment, using public transport, and sharing meals with workers, Pope Francis showed that living the gospel is not a distant idea, but a daily practice. His gentle words and steady example inspired countless people to follow their own call to serve. In the path from Jesuit novice to the white smoke of the conclave, Jorge Mario Bergoglio's journey teaches us that true leadership begins with humble service. By listening to the quiet voice that said, "Serve," he found a way to touch the world with hope and love. Pope Francis made clear that his words must match his actions. He chose to live simply, even as the leader of the world's Catholic Church. He declined to move into the grand papal apartments and instead stayed in a modest guest house within Vatican walls. He refused to wear fancy gold rings or bright red shoes. At midday, he walked to the Vatican cafeteria and shared a meal with kitchen staff and office workers. He said he wanted to be close to the people he served, not separated by palace doors or velvet ropes. His simple lifestyle spoke of deeper values. On Holy Thursday each year, he washed the feet of prisoners in a Rome prison. He knelt before young and old, Christians and Muslims alike, showing that no one is too lowly for respect and care. He visited refugee camps on the islands of Greece, standing knee-deep in cold water to greet families who had risked everything to find safety. He brought food, blankets, and hope, reminding the world that mercy must cross borders and oceans. Even as he toured war zones and held children with cancer in his arms, Pope Francis faced storms within his own church. Reports of abuse and cover-ups weighed heavily on his heart. He listened to survivors whose lives had been broken by betrayal. He spoke honestly before the media, admitting that the church had failed its most vulnerable members. He called for transparent investigations and firm accountability. He taught that mercy does not ignore truth and that healing begins with facing painful realities. Francis also spoke out about our common home, the earth. In 2015, he published an encyclical called Laudato Si. In clear, simple language, he urged every person to protect the planet. He wrote about rising temperatures, polluted water, and the loss of species. He reminded leaders that true development respects people and nature, not just profit. He asked young people to feel the wonder of trees, rivers, and skies, and to act as good stewards of creation. As he grew older, Pope Francis traveled less but prayed more. Pilgrims still came from every continent to see the man who lived his message. In public audiences, he blessed the sick with a gentle touch. He took time to meet street children, hugging them and listening to their dreams. He met world leaders and spoke of peace, yet he always returned to simple themes: mercy, kindness, and service. In early 2025, on a quiet morning, the Vatican announced that Pope Francis had died peacefully in his sleep. News of his passing spread like a soft ripple across the world. There were no state parades or elaborate ceremonies. Instead, churches lit candles, and people gathered in small groups to share memories. They remembered his laugh, his old black shoes, and the gentle way he bowed his head. His true legacy lives on in ordinary acts of love. Volunteers at soup kitchens remembered his example when they served bread to the hungry. Teachers who once heard him speak of mercy now took extra time to listen to struggling students. Children who learned of his life picked up trash in their parks, caring for the earth as he had asked. In every small gesture, his voice seemed to whisper, "Serve one another with love." Pope Francis showed that greatness is not measured by power or wealth, but by the depth of our compassion. He taught that a leader's first duty is to walk beside the weak, to wash the feet of the forgotten, and to protect the fragile gift of life on our planet. Though his voice is now silent, his message continues to guide people toward a world built on mercy, justice, and humble service. Now you have traveled with Jorge Mario Bergoglio from his humble beginnings in Buenos Aires to his final days as Pope Francis. We saw how a quiet boy who loved soccer and books heard a gentle call to serve. We learned how he joined the Jesuits, faced serious illness, and used his recovery to grow in faith. We watched as white smoke rose in Rome and the world welcomed a new pope, one who chose the name Francis to honor simplicity and care for the poor. We saw him live his message every day, refusing luxury, washing prisoners' feet, feeding refugees, and speaking boldly about mercy and protecting our planet. Even when storms hit the church, he faced problems with honesty and called for truth and compassion. Throughout his life, Pope Francis taught that true greatness comes from humble service, not from power or wealth. He reminded us that faith is more than words, it is action. He showed that listening to another person's pain, sharing a simple meal, or caring for the earth can change lives. His final legacy lives on in small acts of kindness: the volunteer who helps a neighbor, the teacher who listens patiently, the child who cares for a park. The deepest lesson from Pope Francis's story is that each of us can choose service over self. When we use our time, our talents, and our hearts to help others, we make the world kinder and brighter. You do not need grand titles or large sums of money. You only need a willing spirit and a caring heart. Start by noticing someone's need today: a friend who feels alone, a family member who needs support, or our shared home, Earth, that calls for protection. By listening to this story, you have practiced your English listening skills and learned new vocabulary, like humble, service, mercy, and legacy. Congratulations on your progress. Now let us celebrate your learning with a quick quiz. Which quality of Pope Francis inspired you the most? A. His humility in daily life. B. His bold service to the poor. Type A or B in the comments below to join the conversation. If you enjoyed this lesson and want more stories to improve your English, please subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the motivation to create high-quality content. Early on, making these lessons is challenging and costly. If you can, please donate to help cover our production expenses. We offer all of this for free to help you learn English. Your donation, no matter how small, helps us continue this mission. Thank you for listening, thank you for learning, and thank you for helping us grow.